Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we are at the Week 10 mark in the FCS season, and we have a ton of content to get into in this episode of the FCS Kickoff. 13 all-conference previews from the FCS. We also have big game previews across the country, and including our stats FCS Game of the Week preview.
Welcome to the FCS Kickoff Show. I'm David Hassagen, and this is the 4-Minute Offense. At the beginning of the season, it was expected that the NEC title would come down to one of two teams, Central Connecticut State and Duquesne. But with 4 weeks left in the season, a stunning third contender is very much in the conversation, and it's Robert Morris. Going into the 2019 season, the Colonials had not won an NEC game since Week 9 of 2016. Not only have they won a conference game when they knocked off St. Francis, they have won 3 in a row for the first time since 2013 after beating Wagner and Bryant the last 2 weeks. Robert Morris has either won or earned a share of the NEC title 6 times, but has only made 1 FCS appearance in 2010. But second-year head coach Bernard Clark has his squad playing way above expectations, especially on defense, where they rank 35th in the country in yards allowed per game. The question is, with both of the preseason favorites left on the schedule, can the Cinderellas from Moon Township pull off the ultimate surprise? The Colonials will host LIU this week. With the season entering the home stretch, now is the time of the year where the experts begin peering into their crystal balls to see who will be in the 2014 field for the FCS playoffs. No crystal ball may be more hazy with 4 weeks left in the Big Sky. While 7 teams are at 500 or better, 5 teams legitimately have the opportunity to be selected for the postseason. Those with the strongest cases are Sacramento State and Weber and Montana, who all sit at 6-2 overall. But in the category of spoilers, it may be Montana State and quietly Portland State, who are both over 500 for the year. An argument could be made for at least 4 of these squads that should be in the postseason. But with their paths crossing so often from now to the end of November, the question is who will survive. 2 of these questions may be answered this week, as Portland State, the major underdogs, host Montana, while the 2 undefeated squads, Weber and Sacramento State, will face off in the California capital. The past 2 seasons, the Big South has come down to 2 teams, Monmouth and Kennesaw State. And while both teams are very much in contention this season, this year there is a third team who has quietly stayed in the race. The Campbell Fighting Camels sit at 6-1 on the season and 3-0 in the conference, in what is their first year of eligibility for the Big South title. The Camels, after coming over from the non-scholarship Pioneer League, has put together one of the more complete teams in 2019's Big South. After losing their opening game of the season, Campbell has won 6 in a row, including wins over Davidson, Mercer, and Gardner-Webb, and have the 9th best defense in the country in passing yards allowed. In order to claim the title, Campbell will have to beat Kennesaw State and Monmouth to claim the title. But first, they must go past the Lions of North Alabama on the road this week. Now here's another reason why you should choose FCS.
I think the FCS gives a student athlete a chance to really develop in the classroom and on the field. And I don't think there's anything that gets in the way of the development of the student athlete. You know, whereas in sometimes other conferences, other levels of play, I think there's some things that could sway a student athlete in a wrong direction here or there. But I think at the FCS level, I think it's all about the student athlete. I think it's all about his development in the classroom and also on the playing field. And it really it keeps your values and your goals right in front of you. And I think there's less things that are going to take you away from those things.
I'm Ike Abuchalam, and this is your football game plan Big Sky Conference whip-around for Week 10. This week, we continue with the theme of some of the top players in the conference. This defensive lineman has been powering his team to the top of the Big Sky, though he doesn't have gaudy stats. With 9 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble, he was named to the conference's own Team of the Week back in Week 3. Can you guess who I'm talking about? If you guessed Darren Choates, you're right on the money. He, along with his other Hornets teammates, led a stingy unit that's giving up only 21 points per game versus FCS opponents and has helped the team achieve the number 5 overall ranking according to Stats FCS. This stalwart unit has much improved from 2018, where they gave up 35.4 points per game. Senior defensive back Alan Perryman and junior linebacker Marcus Hawkins lead the way in tackles, while junior defensive back Darren Bland and sophomore linebacker Miguel Garcia have 2 interceptions apiece. The biggest FCS test of the season for the Hornets comes up this Saturday when they take on number 3 ranked Weber State at home. Along with home field advantage, the Hornets have a more powerful offense that averages 42.3 points per game versus FCS opponents. They can't take their opponents lightly though, as the Wildcats are the only team in the conference that may be hotter than the Hornets, coming in on a 5-game win streak. This has been your football game plan Big Sky Conference whip-around. I'm Ike Abuchalam.
When the Hampton Pirates announced that they were getting former Florida State QB DeAndre Francois late this summer, head coach Robert Prunty had to know that they were going to get a very good football player. What he couldn't have known was how good of a football player that he was going to be. Francois has been as good as advertised for the Pirates this season, looking like his 2016 season where he threw 20 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions. Right now, the senior QB is second in the Big South in passing yards with 1,869, first in touchdown passes with 18, and has completed 60% of his passes, averaging 233.6 yards a game. With 4 games left in the season, Francois hopes to improve on those numbers as the Pirates try to position themselves to record their 3rd straight winning season back-to-back under head coach Robert Prunty. This weekend, the Pirates are at home as they play host to the Presbyterian Blue Hose.
Let's talk about the Big Sky and the Big South because both of these conferences are very much up for grabs. Emery, let's start with the Big Sky. Easily the biggest game of the season coming up. You got Weber taking on Sacramento State. Huge game for Sacramento, who have come out of nowhere this season.
Yeah, Sacramento State does a great job defensively, and I think when you talk about the defense, in particular their run defense, that's going to be the biggest key in this ball game. We know about the run game of Weber State and how well they can run a football with Josh Davis and what he does. The passing game will have to come alive and be a complement to what Weber State does offensively, but I'm more interested in what Sac State does in their passing game. Kevin Thompson does a great job. He facilitates that offense really well. Big game for them, statement game. I do like Sacramento State to win.
And you mentioned actually their defense. You actually have a great interview that's up right now on footballgameplan.com with Cherokee Valeria. He's the defensive passing game coordinator and the secondary coach for Sacramento State. Definitely check that out, as well as iTunes and SoundCloud. Moving to the Big South now, everyone's focused on Kennesaw and Monmouth. We'll talk about them later on in the show. But Campbell, still very much alive. They've had a testing game, though, on the road against North Alabama this week.
Yeah, this is one of those games where you can't look ahead in the schedule if you're Campbell. They've done a great job of not looking ahead so far. They're 6-1 on the season. Great defensive football team. They're getting great play from their true freshman quarterback or their redshirt freshman quarterback. So they're stable on offense. Defensively, they're solid. I think they avoid the upset. They don't look ahead. They can't afford to. They have to win all these games, and I think they'll get one against North Alabama.
As we go into the final month of the regular season, we start to focus on things like the playoffs and yearly awards. One thing I'm taking a close look into is the race for CAA Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year. Right now, I give the edge to Elon cornerback Greg Liggs Jr. has been a ball hawk this season, especially as of late. In 5 games played this year, the senior has 3 pass breakups and 7 interceptions, which leads the conference. He also has 12 tackles on his resume. He's gotten all of his interceptions in the past 3 games. He had 3 interceptions last week against Rhode Island and had 3 in Week 6 against New Hampshire. Right behind him are 2 seniors. James Madison's defensive lineman John Dacca has tallied 9 sacks, leading the conference. He also has 16 tackles for a loss in 9 games, second in the CAA. The other is Albany's defensive end Eli Menser. He's right behind Dacca in both categories with 8.5 sacks and 14.5 tackles for a loss. However, he leads the conference in forced fumbles with 4. On the offensive side of the ball, one player really sticks out to me. In 8 games, Rhode Island quarterback Vito Priore leads the conference in passing yards with 2,534 yards. The next closest is more than 500 yards behind him. He's also completed 61.3% of passes, 3rd best in the conference. He's thrown 15 touchdowns, which is tied for 2nd most in the CAA. The biggest blemish on his resume, Rhode Island's 1-7 record, winless in conference play. Another notable name in the Offensive Player of the Year race is James Madison's Ben DiNucci. He has completed a conference-high 67.7% of passes for 1,951 yards, which is 3rd best in the CAA. He's tied for 2nd in touchdowns with 15. Also, he's only thrown 4 interceptions, least in the conference. The difference between DiNucci and Priore? DiNucci has the Dukes at 8-1, undefeated in FCS play. Alongside them is Albany's quarterback Jeff Undercuffler. He's 2nd in passing yards with 2,021 and leads the conference with 24 touchdowns. However, he's only completed 58.9% of passes. Albany is sitting in 2nd behind James Madison in the conference. There's still a lot of football left to play, but it'll be interesting to see which of these players emerges as the front runner or if another player can sneak into the conversation. For the FCS Whip Around, I'm Dylan Cieslik.
How's it going out there? I'm Zachary Morgan here with your Ivy League Whip Around. Man, what a game this past Saturday. Harvard left it all on the field against Princeton, but ultimately came up short, 30-24, in what was a hard-fought battle between the old rivals. While this loss likely put an end to the Crimson's Ivy League title hopes this year, they can still make an impact on the title race. Enter number 15 ranked Dartmouth, coming off a 59-24 blowout of Columbia, coming into Boston looking to keep their revenge tour going for their big matchup against the number 12 ranked Princeton Tigers next week. But they still have to take on a really tough Harvard team that gave Princeton a run for their money on Saturday. And something to note about the Big Green thus far this year, they haven't really played in any close games yet. Their closest game was a 13-point victory against Penn, and every other game they've won by at least 30 points. And I don't think they've seen a defense quite like Harvard's just yet this season. This is the same defense that got to quarterback Kevin Davidson 4 times last week. It would be foolish not to at least mention the special teams for Harvard that lead the nation in both block punts and block kicks. Talk about making an impact in all areas of the game. For the 2nd week in a row, Harvard will have a real chance to impact the Ivy League title race. And you know what? If they smack Dartmouth in the mouth hard and often, I like their chances. With Football Game Plan, I'm Zachary Morgan. I'll see you next time.
Emory, the CAA is very interesting because now it seems like almost every single game is an elimination game in this conference. And let's start with Stony Brook taking on Richmond. Stony back into the top 25. They've been flirting with that 20 to 25 range all year, but Richmond has come out of nowhere and is having a decent season. They need to win out, though, to get a chance.
Yeah, Richmond right now is 3-1 in conference play. Stony Brook has done a great job in beating these titans of the CAA. Most recently, Villanova. We saw them have a thrilling game against Rhode Island. You want to know if they can win these games that they're technically supposed to win, but Richmond's offense is excellent. I love what they have on defense, especially rushing the passer, so that's going to be key. But I don't think Stony Brook is that type of team to lose to a team like Richmond. Richmond, to me, is still a year away. They're good now, but I think next year they'll be great. But I do like Stony Brook to win this one.
Another interesting game to keep an eye on is Villanova taking on New Hampshire. Villanova relatively safe, we think, in terms of the playoff picture. But New Hampshire's done a nice job coming back in the second half of the season. Really have gotten on a run now, and they can possibly make a playoff spot.
Well, here's the thing for Villanova. I always say you can't let one loss become two. Villanova expended a lot of energy last week trying to beat Stony Brook. This week, defensively, was last week against Stony the aberration or a sign of weakness in their defense? I don't think so. New Hampshire, this is a big test for them. We'll learn a lot about their offense, but I think the Wildcats get a bounce-back victory against New Hampshire.
And one more game to keep an eye on in the CAA involves University of Delaware taking on Towson. We differ in terms of our opinion on Delaware. You say they're done. I still think they have an outside chance. Towson, though, has been one of the more disappointing teams this year.
Well, this is what you would call a play-in game or essentially elimination game because if you're Delaware, you have to win this game. You have to start stockpiling wins. And since the injuries have hit Towson, it's been one after the other. They've been inconsistent. Their seeds of success usually was their defense and their run game and Flacco's ability to make something happen. But right now, all of that is in question. So I think Delaware gets the win here against Towson. I do like the Blue Hens.
Let's move into the Ivy League now. And last week, Harvard gave Princeton a big scare. The Tigers were able to pull off the win and win by 6 points. Now Harvard's back at home, and they face the other favorite of the year, and that is Dartmouth. Dartmouth's offense is unpredictable. Their defense is outstanding, but Harvard might be up for the challenge.
Yeah, Harvard looked really good against Princeton last week and gave the Tigers a run for their money. This is a different defensive animal. Dartmouth's defense is the best in the Ivy League this year. They are strong up front on offense, so they can run the football. They're starting to incorporate the passing game a little bit more. We saw Isaiah Swan get a pick 6 in his return last week for the Dartmouth Big Green. Having him back in the secondary is huge. I think they'll take care of business against the Crimson.
And one independent team to keep an eye on for this week, Merrimack. They've gotten a couple of D1s together back-to-back. Now they take on URI. Tough test with the CAA team for the newly moved-up team from the NE10. How do you see Merrimack faring against you, Rhode Island?
Well, I think they kind of match up well here against Rhode Island, but I do like the passing game of the Rams. I think Aaron Parker and company will have a field day going deep down the field, but Merrimack in the trenches is built a lot like Rhode Island, so that this game, in my opinion, will be close, but I do think Rhode Island will get the win against Merrimack.
As the 2019 season starts to wind down, speculation begins to heat up, not just for postseason playoff places, but also for individual awards. Favorites have been emerging for the Walter Payton and Buck Buchanan Awards, and also for the Jerry Rice Award, which is awarded each year to the outstanding freshman. While the award usually goes to an offensive player, this year might be an exception, with one standout from the MEAC certainly in the running. True freshman linebacker Jacob Roberts from North Carolina A&T has made an impact ever since he arrived in Greensboro. But despite the talent, he still had to fight for playing time on what has become one of the most consistent powers in the conference. Coach Sam Washington said after being quoted after this week's game at Howard, said, "Since the first day I told him, there's only one other freshman who's ever played for me. He's made me proud ever since that moment." Well, he certainly made his coach proud last week when, in just his second start, the Charlotte native Roberts recorded 15 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. With 4 weeks left of the regular season, the graduate of Mallard Creek High School is second on the team in tackles for loss and interceptions, and third in total tackles and sacks. And with some big games left on the schedule, there will be plenty of opportunities for this freshman to become a standout favorite as award season comes around the corner. As Coach Washington said Saturday, he is a one-man wrecking crew. For the FCS Conference Whip Around, I'm David Hashagen.
Welcome to Week 10. With only 4 weeks to go in the season, it's time to start talking playoffs, with the Missouri Valley potentially sending 5 teams that include number 1 North Dakota State, number 4 South Dakota State, number 7 Illinois State, number 9 Northern Iowa, and finally, a team that nobody gave a chance in the beginning of the season to make it. I'm talking about the surprising Salukis of Southern Illinois. The Salukis are led by the three-headed monster running attack of Davis, Williams Jr., and Elliott, which have decimated defenses, including an over 300-yard rushing performance last week, and their hard-hitting, dominant Jeremy Chin-led defense, which has wreaked havoc all year, including a 5-turnover, 3-sack game in which they held Missouri Valley total offensive yard leader quarterback Austin Simmons with 323 yards per game to just 252 yards. With 6 wins over the last 2 seasons, they currently sit at 4-4, but it's the way they got here that is so amazing, as they destroyed FBS UMass on the road and ranked Youngstown State and Ohio Valley Conference leader UT Martin at home. They even showed tremendous heart in their losses to South Dakota State, in which they led in the third quarter. They went toe for toe until the last 2 minutes with Illinois State and came up just short of beating their second FBS Team of the Year against Arkansas State. Head coach Nick Hill has his team believing they can beat anybody. And with their next 3 opponents, Indiana State, Missouri State, and Western Illinois having a combined record of 4-19, the Salukis should put the conference, the league, and the playoff committee on notice heading into their final game against the Bison as they look to break their 9-year playoff drought. For the Missouri Valley Conference, I'm Brian Sullivan.
Well, to say that the MEAC is chaotic would not give it justice. Big games this week could decide a lot, and the biggest one of them all, North Carolina A&T against South Carolina State. The Bulldogs just knocked off Bethune-Cookman. We know Florida A&M's not eligible for the postseason. If South Carolina State wins this game, they're in the driver's seat.
Man, you talk about a team that is the definition of flying the ointment is South Carolina State. They're good, and they really control their own destiny because they already beat Bethune-Cookman, who's a really good football team. And if they knock off A&T, they have a clear lane to the Celebration Bowl. But if you're A&T, if you win, you can regain control of that. You have a clear shot to the Celebration Bowl. Either way, one of these teams are going to go to the playoffs, I think, because it's going to be a huge D1 win that they're going to get. I do like what South Carolina State has done defensively. Buddy Pugh has done a great job on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I just don't know if they have enough on the perimeter to beat A&T. I do like the Aggies to get the win.
Let's move to the Missouri Valley Conference. 2 big games to keep an eye on, one of which will be a test of strength. Northern Iowa taking on Illinois State. These 2 teams are ranked very close to each other in the polls. A lot of people are considering this might be the game that decides who's that 3rd team from the Missouri Valley in the playoffs.
Right, because we talked about this on our FCS Opening Drive podcast. There's a lot of teams that are jockeying for that position, and only a few are going to get in because of the strength of where everyone else lies in these other conferences. So if you're Northern Iowa, in my opinion, this is a must-win game for them. But I think when you look at Illinois State, they have an ugly loss or 2 on their schedule. They need this game. So you have 2 teams coming in desperately needing a win. Illinois State, we know what they are with their run game with James Robinson and what they can do. But I do like Northern Iowa to win this ball game. Normally, they are one of the tougher teams up front. They can match wits up front at the point of attack with Illinois State. They have the element of getting pressure on the quarterback. I think that element alone will help stymie Illinois State's offense. I do like the Panthers to win.
And another team looking desperately for a win are the Penguins of Youngstown State. They are home with the number 1 Bison this week. Almost an impossible task to get the win over North Dakota State, but they almost have to make the postseason.
Man, it seems like weeks 1 through 3 was so long ago, and I was all on the Youngstown State bandwagon, ready to jump on the board of the train because they were playing great football. They were playing great defense. Their offense was looking explosive. And then the middle part of their schedule hit, and they started to lose a lot of games in a bad way. And it's unfortunate when you're trying to fight your way back into the playoff standings, you get Mike Tyson in his prime to come and play you. So I think this is a tough matchup for Youngstown State. I will go with the Bison to win this one.
I'd like to give a big shout out to Duquesne's A.J. Hines, who broke Pedro Bowman's 35-year school touchdown record with his 42nd career touchdown. The Dukes have put together a solid season so far, going 3-0 in the conference and 5-2 overall. They'll need A.J. Hines if they hope to get back to the playoffs. Central Connecticut State keeps on winning and keeps ascending in the polls. The 7-1 Blue Devils are now ranked number 19, having matched their highest ever ranking, which came in 2006. Both of these teams play the remainder of their games against NEC competition. If both teams continue to win out, their November 23rd head-to-head matchup would have serious playoff implications. With this FCS Whip Around, I'm Scott Glennon.
Hey guys, Jenny Matiwaika here with your OVC Whip Around. Murray State took a costly loss 12-14 to Jacksonville State, the predicted favorite of the OVC. The 2-3 Racers recently highlighted Jeff Lyles, the former offensive lineman and current chief of police of Murray. Lyles began his football journey in Itawamba Community College, Mississippi. Then head coach Frank Baumer spotted Lyles, and from there he became a Racer. Even though Baumer was leaving Murray State, Lyles began to lay the bricks for the foundation of a home where he would finish his degree and make forever friends with his teammates. It was after his time at Murray where his story continues. Taking a leap for applying for a patrolling position in Murray, Lyles thought the deck was stacked against him as he sought the one open spot with over 100 applicants. But his destiny was laid out for him, as he was consistently called back and eventually selected for that coveted spot. Taking lessons learned from the field, Lyles worked his way up the enforcement ladder, leading to his current post as chief of police. Lyles credits football along with his mother and grandmother for all the successes in his life. Their mentality of anything is possible and don't let anyone tell you you can't is the driving force behind Lyles' career. You'll find that Lyles is a staple on the sideline of any Racers game. When Lyles was chief of police, then coach Chris Hatcher called the former player to travel with the team as their accompanying officer. Knowing the importance of having a positive mentor, Lyles was excited to be just that for these students. He continuously aspires to be the best mentor possible to the players and a positive force in their everyday lives. This is a familiar concept since, as chief of police, Lyles considers building strong relationships with members of the community a critical part of being a leader. He was honored to be able to give back to the football community that had given him so much. Lyles consistently reminds players to take advantage of everything Murray State University has to offer, and not a day goes by where he does not acknowledge everything the university has done for him. And above all, he vows to never stop learning. This is Jenny Matiwaika with your OVC Whip Around, and I'll be seeing you around.
The NEC has become a three-way fight now as we get into the last 4 weeks of the season. The OVC is even more wide open. Let's start, though, with the NEC. Central Connecticut State, they are the only ranked team out of this conference. They seem to be able to control their own destiny. Duquesne and Robert Morris are challenging them at the top. They take on Wagner this week on the road. This is still not a team they can take lightly.
Yeah, Wagner's 1-7, but they have athletes. They have Senior Bowl guys. They have Shrine Game guys. They have a lot of talent on that Seahawks football team. Jason Hotalum does a great job in coaching the Wagner Seahawks. All of that being said, this is a very good Central Connecticut State team. We talked about this before on how high I have them ranked in my top 25. They're in my top 10. I think Central Connecticut State does a great job on both sides of the line of scrimmage. You know, that's a theme here on this show. If you can win up front, you can win a lot of games. Javon Brown, pro prospect up front for the Blue Devils. One block punt in the back of the end zone away from being completely undefeated. I think they avoid the upset here and knock off Wagner.
Let's go to the OVC now, because the OVC is pure chaos. 5 teams that can all win the automatic bid. Let's start with Austin Peay taking on Eastern Kentucky. Elimination or potential title-winning game.
I like both teams in this game as far as what they bring to the table. If I were to ask you who has the best defense in the OVC, instantly you'll probably think Jacksonville State, you'll probably think Austin Peay, you even may say UT Martin, but it's Eastern Kentucky and their defense. And I think defensively, you have to be able to stop Javon Craig and what they bring to the table in the run game against Austin Peay. I do like the Colonels to win this one. It's going to be a shocker around the FCS, but I do like Eastern Kentucky to get the win.
You mentioned Jacksonville State. They have UT Martin on the road. UT Martin's one of the biggest shocks of this season. No one thought they were going to have maybe 3 wins. All of a sudden, now they have a chance of getting the automatic bid out of the OVC. What do they have to do to beat Jacksonville State?
They have to weather the first quarter flurry. When you talk about a team in Jacksonville State, they can really push the pace, push the tempo. They work touchdown to check down in their passing game. They can put up points in a hurry. If they can withstand that flurry in the first quarter, they have a shot. They do have a shot because they themselves can run the football, and they do take the ball away on defense. And we know Jacksonville State, you never know which Gamecock team you're going to get from week to week. So this game will be close. Both teams are going to be fighting for their lives, but for whatever reason, this is the type of game that Jacksonville State will show up in. I like the Gamecocks.
Hey guys, it's Scott Schertzen, and we are kicking off the last month of the regular season with a matchup that is just about to determine the champion of the Patriot League. If you've been watching my reports, you know I'm a numbers guy. Numbers tell a story, and boy, have we got a good story this weekend. We have 3-0 in Conference Lehigh going up against 2-0 Holy Cross. So starting out, you have 2 teams that have gone a combined 7-1 in the last 8 games, and they are both riding hot streaks. These are 2 teams with a ton of momentum, and they know they control their own destiny, with Lehigh pulling off a huge win at home against the Hoyas last week, while the Crusaders just straight up ran over Colgate 31-10, thanks in large part to Dominic Cozier running for 155 yards and Degenhardt's 3 TD passes. Now, each team needs one quarter in particular to be strong. The Crusaders are weakest on both ends of the ball in the first quarter, where Holy Cross has been outscored 57-27 across the first 8 games of the season. So this is a team that needs to set the tone early. Conversely, Lehigh's offense is strongest in the fourth quarter, which I'm going to get to in a second, but they're weakest on both offense and D in the third, so a start to the second half for them is crucial. Additionally, in Lehigh's 4-game winning streak, 2 things stuck out to me. Number 1, all 4 of their wins came in 1-possession games, and 2, during this streak, they scored 88 points as a team. Fine. Half of which came after the third quarter. 44 of those 88 points came after the third quarter, meaning they are a dangerous fourth quarter team, and the Crusaders cannot let late game fatigue take control. One last stat for you Crusader fans. The first 4 games of the season, your team averaged 230 yards on offense while scoring just 33 points. The last 4, while you went 3-1, you averaged 422 yards of offense and scored an impressive 120 points. Something to be excited about there. These are 2 teams with, like I said, a ton of momentum going into this one. Looking forward to the weekend once again. Thanks for watching. I'm Scott Schertzen. As always, stay awesome.
I'm Alex Marinoni with your Week 10 Pioneer League Whip Around. This past week, we saw 3 of the league's true contenders for the Pioneer League crown go down this week in Stetson, Davidson, and Dayton. All 3 of these teams now have lost their second conference game, ultimately ending any chances at an FCS playoff berth, with both Davidson and Dayton having already lost to the conference leader in San Diego, ending their Pioneer League championship opportunity. However, there is still one team left in the conference who has a chance to dethrone the reigning champs, the Drake Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are now the only remaining undefeated team besides San Diego in the Pioneer League. Now, looking at their conference's matchup so far, Drake has beaten the weaker part of their schedule, with a combined record of 6-10, but they've done it in convincing fashion. As of now, the Bulldogs own the best plus-minus in conference, outscoring their opponents by 107 points so far. The secret to this Drake team has been the outstanding play of their defense. The Drake defense has been stout, finishing in the top 20 in the FCS in most categories. This defense will need to be at its best going up against a San Diego offense that continues to be among one of the best in the FCS. After throwing up 50 points on Dayton, San Diego now jumps up to the number 4 offense in the country. Their 7.47 yards per play is good for first in the entire FCS. With that being said, you know San Diego is going to get their points, but can Ian Corman and company keep up and give their defense a chance to make a play? The 2 players I have to look out for this team is wide receiver Michael Bandy of San Diego and running back Drew Lauer of Drake. Michael Bandy is coming off a week against Dayton where he went for 9 receptions, 194 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Bandy has been Reed Sinette's most consistent target this year and is putting together a type of season that will have the NFL on notice. Sinette has been the leader of this offense, but Bandy has been the pulse. Drake's defense will need to key on slowing down Bandy to keep this one close. On the flip side, San Diego will need to be aware of where Drew Lauer is on the field at all times. Lauer is coming off a 28-carry, 242-yard, and 2-touchdown day last Saturday against Morehead State. He also added 2 catches for 20 yards, adding to a very productive day. San Diego, despite how well they've been able to move the ball, have also been prone to giving up a lot of points, most notably with Dayton's 38 last week. If Drew Lauer and company can move the ball on the ground, then Drake will have a chance to win the time of possession and keep the explosive offense of San Diego off the field. If Drake wants a chance in this one, they will have to win this part of the game. Drake has a great chance to end the 33-game win streak San Diego is currently running with and be the new team representing the Pioneer League in the college playoff. A key part of the game they will have to win in doing so is winning the third quarter. These last few weeks, San Diego has been in tight games up until halftime, but clearly made the appropriate adjustments and took over in the third, ultimately running away with the wins. If Drake can keep this a one-score game or even take a lead going into the half, they will need to stay one step ahead of San Diego coming out of the half. If not, San Diego will control their own destiny yet again. For the Pioneer League, I'm Alex Marinoni.
Emery, what's become clear is that the Patriot League can still go either way. The Pioneer League, though, could be decided this weekend. Let's start in the Patriot League. Holy Cross taking on Lehigh, 2 of the teams that easily have the best chance to win this whole thing. They're both undefeated. Who do you like in this game and why?
This is the Patriot League championship game, to be honest. Lehigh has won 4 straight. Coach Tom Gilmore has done a great job in his first year there. Coach Rob Chesney has done a great job in his second year at Holy Cross. Great defensive team, great energy coming from the head coach. This is going to be a tough game for Lehigh. I thought Lehigh was going to lose it last week against Georgetown, but I think Holy Cross, because of what they do defensively, I love what they have in the special teams department. I like the Crusaders to win. You
mentioned Georgetown. They actually have the best record in the conference in terms of overall, but they've struggled in conference for whatever reason. They've lost a couple tight games. They now have Colgate coming to town. This is almost a must-win for Georgetown if they want to keep any hopes alive. Yeah, it's a must-win game for Georgetown. I'll be on that broadcast for the Georgetown game, so obviously I can't make a prediction, but what I'll be looking for is which Georgetown offense shows up. You want to see Georgetown's offense hit the ground running against Colgate, and to be honest, you want to see Colgate's offense wake up and join the party. That's what's been missing from this team. We know they're a dominant defense. We know that wasn't going to be replicated because just attrition, and you're not going to repeat historic numbers in back-to-back years, but you expect their offense to be a little bit more consistent, and you wanted to see the depth that they have offensively. They dealt with some injuries. We'll see if they can get back on the right side of the tracks in this game. So this is a huge game for both teams, in my opinion. Let's move now to the Pioneer League, where it's been a war of attrition. Stetson has fallen by the wayside. Dayton is gone. Davidson's lost a couple of games. And so now it's pretty much a one and done to see who gets the automatic bid. San Diego hosting Drake. Drake has gotten on a nice run after a rough start to the season. San Diego has been just consistently getting better week to week. How do we see this game going?
I've counted out San Diego in a couple of games this year. I guess maybe because their opener, they took a loss, and I was like, yeah, it's maybe not the same Torero squad, but they've caught fire late. Michael Bandy is one of the best receivers in the country, Senior Bowl watch list guy, and we know Drake can run the football. And everyone has always looked up to San Diego over the last couple of years, and this is the big dog on the block that you have to beat. So I know Drake will be coming into this ball game a game opponent. I don't think they'll get the job done. I like San Diego. The Paladins of Furman have been excellent so far this season, sitting at 5-3 on the year, 4-1 in conference play. Now, where they've had success is on the ground running the football. Furman averages 282 yards rushing per game, averaging 6.2 yards to carry. Defensively, they're one of the better defenses in the SoCon as well. Now, their pass defense is what gives folks fits. The Paladins have only allowed 5.8 yards an attempt and have picked off opposing QBs 7 times this season, only allowing 8 touchdowns. With the strong defense and run game like they have, it'll be interesting to see how far that could take them this season. They're about to enter a gauntlet of a schedule as they play Chattanooga this weekend before taking on VMI and Wofford. So needless to say, we'll learn a lot about Furman's viability as a title contender in the next 3 weeks of the season.
This week is a light schedule, only 4 games. The 3-2 Nichols Colonels travel to face the 4-2 Cardinals of Incarnate Word. This is my game of the week. The winner creeps closer to first and puts a loser in a precarious position to win the conference. The Cardinals have a more balanced offense, while the Colonels are more run-heavy. Both defenses are in the middle of the conference in rushing yards allowed. I feel the key matchup is the Nichols pass D versus the Cardinals pass offense. The Colonels have 7 interceptions on the year and yield 260 yards per game. The Cards put up 270 yards per game in the air and have thrown 6 interceptions. Can the Colonels and quarterback Chase Forcade do enough in the air against the last-ranked Cardinals air defense? This is an offense that relies on a run game, but they complete a lot of passes. If Forcade can limit his interceptions against the top ball-hawking D and the receivers have more yards after the catch, this will tip the scales in their favor. Nichols holds the edge in both the kick and punt return games. Look for them to use this to their advantage in order to win the field position battle. For the home team Cardinals, they look to continue with their well-balanced offense to keep the Colonels guessing on defense. Sophomore quarterback John Copeland has been effective in the air and with his legs. They use a trio of running backs, allowing fresh legs to win the ground game. This should be an entertaining game. I expect the Cards to emerge victorious after dropping last week's game to Northwestern State. Both offenses should put up points. I'll go with Incarnate Word 35, Nichols 31, and a barn burner. That's a wrap on Week 10. For Football Game Plan, I'm Dan McGillicuddy. Enjoy the games, everyone.
Now let's get into the SoCon and the Southland, where both of these conferences, you could easily make a case for 6 teams to win this conference going into the last 4 weeks of the season. Let's start with the SoCon. Furman versus Chattanooga. Chattanooga is kind of the forgotten team that's still in this race. Furman obviously have been ranked highly for most of the year. They would be the favorites in this game on paper, but Chattanooga's at home.
Yeah, you look at what could be a worst-case scenario for the SoCon as if Wofford goes to Death Valley and knocks off Clemson with that option attack. We've seen a SoCon team knock off an ACC team already this season with the Citadel and Georgia Tech. But in this ball game, we know Furman's defense is excellent. Chattanooga, like you said, is the forgotten team. For a while, they were number 1 in the SoCon. So offensively, how can they find success in the passing game? If they can consistently do that, we know Furman does a great job up front. They do a great job of applying pressure. Chattanooga will have success. I just like the run game of Furman. Control the clock. They don't beat themselves. And it's going to put a lot of onus on Chattanooga to make plays consistently in their passing game, stay on the field on third downs, and maximize those opportunities in the red zone. That's a lot to ask against a very good defense. I like the Paladins.
Let's move to the Southland now, which has turned into the Wild West once again. But Central Arkansas has emerged from the pack to take control of this conference, but they have a challenging game this week. They've got Lamar.
It's tough for Central Arkansas to get respect, I feel like. You know, this was a team that knocked off Western Kentucky. They're 6-2 on the year, and yet they're not being nationally thought of as a potential team that can go far. I guess because they play a lot of close games, but that also shows the resolve of a team that's played a lot of close games and coming out on the back end victorious. Lamar is the fly in the ointment, just like Incarnate Word, in my opinion. They are the fly in the ointment this year in the Southland. Last year they were leading the way and getting into the playoffs, but I do like Central Arkansas to play another close game against the Cardinals and get the win.
Incarnate Word pretty much following the same script as they did last year to get into the postseason, just winning enough games to get by. They've got a tough game this week at home against Nichols, who is looking to rebound to get any respect and possibly get an at-large bid.
Yeah, Nichols really needs this game because right now they're reeling, and we know their defense is good. We know Fourcade is a good quarterback. We know they're well coached. But this is a unique challenge because we know the speed and athleticism and the pace at which Incarnate Word operates. So this will be a tough game for them, but I do feel as though they'll get back on the winning track and knock off the Cardinals. I do like Nichols to win. While there are a lot of changes in and around the SWAC, the one constant has been the play of the Alcorn State Braves. Head coach Fred McNair does a fantastic job of having his team ready to play week in, week out, and it's the level of consistency in which that it happens that makes it so impressive. Right now, the Braves are 6-2 on the year, and they look like they're headed to their third Celebration Bowl appearance in 4 seasons. The hallmark of their success has been their ability to dominate at the point of attack. Alcorn State does a great job in that regard on both sides of the ball. Now this season, they're only giving up 3.1 yards a carry on the ground and have allowed only 5 rushing touchdowns all season long. They've also picked off opposing QBs 12 times, sacking them 16. So while the offense gets the headlines, the true story is how the Braves are getting it done this season, and they're doing it with a great defense. They're on a bye this weekend before heading out to Grambling on November the 9th.
Well, when we talk about the SWAC basically looks like it's done. It looks like Alcorn will be the team that is the dominant force and go to the SWAC title game in the Celebration Bowl. But Alabama A&M has been a really good team this season. They take on Southern, who's been a really good team in the West. This is a pretty matched up teams. I want to see who wins this ball game, coming off a big win for A&M.
Well, can they handle success? Because that has been the hallmark of A&M so far this season. Play a great game, play below expectations. Now you're facing a really good team in Southern who, like you said, lead the West, and they're trying to keep pace to keep Arkansas Pine Bluff out of the top spot in that side of the division. So I think Southern will have to come in and play their best defensive game. Jordan Bentley is one of the best running backs in the SWAC. Dual threat guy, reminds me a lot of Justin Fargas, who played with the Oakland Raiders, played with USC. They have a really good quarterback in Akil Glass, who's going to be a pro prospect next year as a senior. So they have all of the pieces to give Southern problems. Southern is really relegated to their offensive line dominating in their run game. But if they have to throw, I don't think they're as consistent. I like A&M to get the win. This would be a huge win for Coach Maynard and that program at Alabama A&M. Still putting a lot of pressure on Alcorn State.
Well, Arkansas Pine Bluff has been another story this year. Quietly, they've had a very, very good season, but they're going to have a tough opponent. Jackson State's coming off an overtime win last week. Going to be a really interesting game, really challenging game for the Golden Lions.
Yeah, shout out to Jackson State for knocking off Prairie View A&M. Despite giving up a lot of yards on the ground to DeWanya Tucker, they were able to get the stops when needed to get the victory. So this program, they have a lot of athletes, have a lot of talent, and so we saw them pull off the upset last week. Arkansas Pine Bluff, even this deep into the season, I still don't know which Golden Lions team we're watching. Is it a really good team, or is it a team that was feasting on weaker opponents earlier in the year that have helped them stockpile these W's that they got on their record? I know they have 2 tremendous backs in the backfield, but I like Jackson State in this ball game. Very impressed with what I saw from them last week against the Panthers. I think they'll carry that momentum into this ball game against the Golden Lions.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
It's now time for the FCS Stats Game of the Week, and this week we're going to the Big South in what could be a potential playoff decider of who will be the automatic bid. Monmouth at Kennesaw State. All the hype we heard from Monmouth this year is we're going to beat Kennesaw. We're going to beat Kennesaw. We're going to beat Kennesaw. Now the opportunity is here. Monmouth still has a chance to win this automatic bid outright. They're going to have to fight Campbell off for it. Both of these teams will. The question is now, if Kennesaw loses this game with their strength of schedule, how far do they drop, and does that cost them a playoff spot? They almost have to win this game just as much. What are the two keys to victory? We'll start with Monmouth.
I think offensively for Monmouth, they can use their passing game to help out their running game. We know how great Pete Guerrero has been for this football team this season, and you have to expect that Kennesaw State will come in and want to stop the run and make Kenji Bahar beat them throwing the football. And we know Kenji Bahar can beat anyone throwing the football. So I think in this game for Monmouth, they could probably come out throwing a little bit to loosen up that box and allow Guerrero to have more room to run. I saw them do this against Gardner-Webb, and then they were able to go back to the run game, and that's when Guerrero popped those 2 long runs. So if they take that same approach against Kennesaw and get those secondary players to worry about coverage and not be aggressive against the run, they could have success. Defensively, it's about alignment, assignment, execution. Understand what your job is, make sure you're lined up properly, and do what your job says you have to do. If you have the dive guy, take the dive guy. If you have the pitch, take the pitch. If you're responsible for the tight end releasing in the flat, don't worry about the dive or the pitch guy. Take the tight end releasing in the flat. So it's about alignment, assignment, execution. That's what they have to do in order to win.
Let's talk about Kennesaw. You mentioned that they run that option offense. They also replaced a lot of parts this year. We didn't realize how good they were going to be. They've turned into another powerhouse. They're winning by big margins. What are their keys to victory to knock off Monmouth?
I'm going to start with their defense. I think defensively they have to be a little bit more aggressive versus the run. They're still a very good defense, one of the top defenses in the FCS. So in this game, trust your personnel out there on the perimeter, your corners, your safeties, and their communication. Get more aggressive versus the run to make Monmouth have to throw the football to win this ball game, to keep them in second and long, third and long situations. Put those guys at a disadvantage because you sold out against the run. That's what they have to do defensively. Now on offense, play your game. Don't come out and try to, okay, we're going to throw first, we're going to try to go for the jugular, we're going to try to trick play here. Play Kennesaw State football on offense, and that right there is always enough to not only win you games, but definitely more so than anything, keep the game close where you can be a little bit more aggressive and pull off a key turnover or something like that and get the win. So those are the keys, in my opinion, for Kennesaw in this matchup.
And who wins this ball game? Because obviously this is a critical one in the Big South.
Well, I think Monmouth really wants this game. And sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for, or you just might get it. But this is something that they've been looking forward to throughout the season. They've, stayed true to course. They had a couple losses. One was to Western Michigan, but they've always talked about Kennesaw State. So I do think Monmouth finally gets over the hump and knocks off the Owls and just makes things very interesting, not only in the Big South, but in the FCS playoff picture as a whole.
That'll do it for the FCS Kickoff. Remember, for all your football knowledge, go to footballgameplan.com for coverage of the FCS, the pros, and beyond. For the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt, I'm David Hassagen. Thanks for watching.